Hello everyone, I'm Angela Drummond Matthews and this is English Composition 2. Today we start Unit 1. In this unit, you'll write a classical argument about an issue of race. You'll learn about classical argument by reading the classical argument website in the Week 2 Unit 1 folder. Also, read the forms of argument document and the 3 types of argument document in the argument section of Course Basics. Read how to make a good argument and how to avoid logical fallacies. Next, you'll read articles about race issues in the Unit 1 Race Readings folder. Also, read articles from the Issues of Race webpage. You'll go to the discussion board and do the Unit 1 discussions. One of the discussions asks you to watch a documentary on Netflix. If you don't have Netflix, you can watch one of the alternative documentaries on Canopy.com, the link to which is posted in the Week 2 Unit 1 folder. Canopy.com is free for Dallas College students. You'll have an oral discussion of the readings with your group members. And you may also join me on Friday for optional class discussion. You'll learn about doing research by watching the videos provided in Course Basics. You'll also practice your use of sources with the quote integration practice assignment. Finally, you'll choose a topic from the readings that you've explored, and you'll write a well-researched classical argument essay. You'll document your research in an annotated bibliography. You'll peer at it with your classmates, and you'll turn in a final draft. First, let's talk about classical argument. A classical argument is a basic structure that allows a writer to create an organized, easy-to-understand argument that will convince a reader of a position. It uses logical reasoning to give reasons, examples, and evidence to support a position. When we argue, we use 2 types of reasoning, deductive and inductive. And that reason can either be cogent, good, or fallacious, bad. Let's look at how these forms of reasoning work using the syllogism. A syllogism is an argument in its most basic form. The cogent syllogism has 3 basic rules according to Howard Kahane's Logic in Contemporary Rhetoric, the use of reason in everyday life. 1. It must have justified premises. A premise is like a statement of fact. It doesn't need to be proven because it's self-evident or it has already been proven by another argument. 2. It must have all relevant information. For example, it's not enough to say that if it has feathers, 2 legs, and a beak, it's a duck. It could be any bird. That's not enough information to prove duck. And 3, it has to be valid, which means that the premises lead necessarily to the conclusion, or that accepting the premises warrants accepting the conclusion. For example, it isn't good enough to say, the sky is blue, Donald Trump is president, so therefore everyone should eat cornflakes for breakfast. The premises are true, but they don't lead to that conclusion. It doesn't follow, so it's not valid. Let's look at a commonly used syllogism. We start with the justified premise, Socrates is a human. How can we justify that? Well, while it's probably self-evident, if necessary, we could do a DNA test. Premise 2. All humans are mortal. Is that a justified premise? Yes. There hasn't been any human born who was not subject to death. Conclusion, therefore, Socrates is mortal. The syllogism is valid because the premises lead necessarily to this conclusion. Furthermore, this is deductive reasoning. In deductive reasoning, if the premises are true, the conclusion cannot be false. Unfortunately, most of the reasoning we have to do in real life cannot be deductive. We don't always have everything we need to prove the arguments we want to make, so we have to use inductive reasoning instead. In inductive reasoning, if the premises are true, the conclusion is probably true. That's because we might be missing some information like what will happen in the future. So we're basing our information on patterns or examples that we've seen in the past. This kind of reasoning is what we do every day, and it's also the kind of reasoning that's done in science. Scientists do experiments to build up a preponderance of evidence about a subject. If a pattern can be established, they can tell the conclusion that they reach is probably true. Let's look at an example from philosophyterms.com. Premise 1. Ben has visited 4 places today. Premise 2. Sam has gone to those places soon after. Conclusion. Therefore, Sam is probably following Ben. Is that necessarily true? No, but it's probably true. Inductive reasoning allows us to look at patterns in the world and create general conclusions from them. In science, once those general conclusions are found, scientists can look for deductive proofs to solidify their claims. What does this have to do with your writing? Well, I've always believed that the key to good writing is the ability to make good sense. If you can think critically, use logical reasoning, and avoid bad reasoning or fallacies, then you have a better chance of communicating clearly. In this unit, we'll be writing about race. This is a subject that people become very emotional about, and rightly so. That is all the more reason why we should apply critical thinking and logical reasoning to the issue. As you read the articles, apply the elements of thought that you learned about in the critical thinking section. Look at different points of view, the questions at issue, your assumptions and the assumptions of others. Weigh these things in your mind, avoiding bias as much as you can. Look at the facts and the patterns that you find. Use the strategies of deduction and induction to come up to some conclusions. Formulate a claim, then do research to add information and evidence. When you write your essay, you'll use the classical format. It starts with an introduction, as in all essays. Next is the narration, in which you explain your background information necessary to your argument. Sometimes this is combined with the introduction. In the next section, you make your claim or proposition and back it up with your proofs and evidence in your confirmation. Next, you examine opposing arguments in your refutation. Give some concessions to show that you understand where your opposition is coming from, but then refute the opposition by explaining the context and conditions that make your position valid. Finally, write a conclusion that doesn't just rehash the bulk of the essay, but one that moves readers to act or to consider the future or consider continuing the conversation or studying the topic more on their own. I'll be looking at these elements in your essays, so please be sure to study the argument form and to follow it when making your outline. That's all for now. I hope everything was clear. Do your reading and email me if you have any questions at all. I hope to see you in the optional class discussion on Friday at noon. Have a great week. Bye-bye.